All right, welcome back to Words of the Wise. Today I have Chief Heubusch from Batavia PD in New York. He is also the president of the New York State Association Chief of Police. Really looking forward to having this conversation today. Welcome, Chief Heubusch. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate you reaching out.
Of course. No, I'm really looking forward to our conversation. You have some really unique insights into wellness. And so I would love to first maybe give a little bit of background. I know 26 years is a long time to be in this career. You were the first outside chief, at least in the most recent history, to be hired in Batavia. So I was hoping you can give a little bit of background.
Sure. I started my career in a rural town in Wyoming County, New York, in a small town where I grew up, the Village of Warsaw Police Department. I was hired there in 1998, 1999. After I put myself through a police academy, I was hired as a part-time police officer there. It was a small department, six full-timers, six part-timers. I got lucky enough to be hired and then be promoted to the rank of assistant police chief, which essentially meant I got to work midnights and nobody bothered me. But in 2012, I applied for the position here in Batavia, which is an adjacent county to Wyoming County. And I was lucky enough to be hired here and brought on as their chief then. And to your point, I was the first outside police chief in quite some time. And there was, some challenges to deal with when I got here, just internally and externally as well.
Thank you. And I'm really interested to hear, what that experience was walking into a new organization as an outside chief, what some of those challenges were, and how did you approach, because I know that wellness is important to you and you've been making a really conscious effort to build a culture of wellness. How did you approach that coming in as an outside chief?
So honestly, I didn't do enough research on the department, just to be open about that. And what I learned was from the folks that were here. It was a transition. Again, I came from a very small department into a department of there. Well, now we have 35 sworn, but at the time it was like 32 sworn, with additional civilian staff that I wasn't used to as well. So there was quite a learning curve for myself, and I was young at the time, um, and hadn't dealt with some of the city type atmosphere, if you will. Again, I was in a small rural town village. Although the city of Batavia isn't large by any stretch, it is larger than I was used to. So it was a lot of learning the ropes for the first few years, honestly, of what was working well, what needed to be improved upon, and just kind of going through the cycles of what was here and what we were trying to build. So a big learning curve, but a good one.
I really appreciate the honesty of saying, you know what, like I came in here and maybe I should have done a little bit of research. Maybe I didn't do the best in that moment. Like I could have done better, but I learned. And I think that that's all that anyone can ask for is that humility to say, you know what, like we learned. It was a learning curve,
Mhm.
but like we got there. And I think to me, like I would rather that than someone come in and be like, I was perfect.
Yeah, I mean, we don't know everything. You can't if you run into somebody that knows it all, please let me know, that actually knows it all. But I think that's one thing that is important in any role that you're in any agency, department, position, especially in a leadership role. You have to know when you're wrong, and you have to be willing to admit that. Otherwise, people aren't going to see who you are. They're just going to think that you're a know-it-all, and they're not going to be able to tell you anything. But I certainly fall on my face a lot, and I learn from it. Hopefully, I learn from it, uh, and hopefully, I don't make the same mistake twice. But you definitely have to be open and honest about what your shortcomings are as a leader in order to lead people. In my opinion.
I love that you said like no matter what role you're in, because I do think it's a forever evolving process, and as you grow as a human being, like this could be in your personal life or your work life, as you grow and you develop, you're constantly learning new things. And that's how you grow and develop. And if you aren't learning new things, then you're stagnant, right? And so there's no room for growth and advancement. And I know that that impacts culture. If you're the person who's like unwilling to adapt and to learn, regardless of what role you're in, that affects the people around you and the way that they see you and, the environment because people are like, well, like why even talk to that person? They're not willing to listen, they're not willing to adapt. They just think they know everything.
And I learned that early on from some of my really good field training officers that I had back at my old department is that every day is a learning day. You do not know everything. You know a lot and you'll learn a lot. You'll get experience over time. You'll get comfortable with not only the job, but with the people that you're dealing with. And then life will change. Something will change. This job will change. We've seen more change over the last 5 years in New York than I've seen in my entire career.
Yeah.
Not just technology based, but some of the laws and proceedings that we deal with here in New York. But that's one thing that I learned early on from some great field training officers that I had, and that kind of always stuck with me. And I always tried to pass that along as I was training people. Is every day is an opportunity for you to learn something. Maybe it's about yourself. Maybe it's about somebody in the community. Maybe it's about a task or, the way that you handle something. Um, and don't pass those opportunities up. You need them. You need to create that file or record in your brain of that experience and that incident and that experience so you can pass that along when it's your turn to pass it along. I've always been big on uh, we are teaching the next generation of folks how to do our job. They'll do it differently than we do it, but we are teaching them how to do our job from day one. And that I think that's extremely important. Can't stress that enough.
I love that you had really good influences in your life. And from what I understand, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, but from my understanding, FTOs really have a lot of weight on the culture and having really good FTOs to train and to teach you guys is really important. I I know, and this is what I believe, and again, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think that you can learn what to do and what not to do from people. And so, I know in talking to you offline that, you've seen maybe some things in this career of what not to do, and you've seen firsthand how poor coping mechanisms can impact lives. And you've learned from that. And I was hoping that maybe you can explain a little bit of that experience too, because I know you've learned some really good things and then you've seen maybe some not so good things and learned from that.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. I think some of the best lessons that I've taken away, not only from the good FTOs that I have, but from some of the other officers, were what not to do,
Mm,
not how not to handle a situation, and specifically how not to handle your personal life outside of work, I
mhm,
guess is the best way to put that. Because I have seen, unfortunately, officers get into the alcohol or substance use that is not appropriate, and it's not a healthy coping mechanism to deal with the stresses of their job or the stresses of their marriage or whatever the stress is. Um, and then you bring that to work with you in the way that you deal with people on the street or at calls is not the best. So unfortunately, yeah, I think everybody that's in this profession has seen what not to do. And as long as you have a very good role model or you have role models that you can look up to and that show you the right way to do things, it's easy to follow that path. And it's a work in progress, though, because not everybody has the same ability to see one situation and go that way and do the right thing. A lot of people are kind of drawn into the easy out or the easy way to deal with the situation and deal with the stresses of what the job brings or what life brings, and wind up going down that hole and spiraling their career and their personal life, unfortunately.
yeah. And it honestly makes me so sad because I think that that was the culture. Like that was what people were taught to do back then. I've heard going to church or choir practice or, whatever verbiage you use for that. But that's just the way it was, that was the way that you were offloading stress. I'll say like back in the day with quotes,
back in the day.
back in the day. But I really appreciate that you said that it's the easy way out because I fully believe that. I think that as humans, our default is to take the path of least resistance.
Yeah.
We don't necessarily want to get up and do hard things. It's like easier to avoid, to escape, to numb, to sit on the
Mhm.
couch, to not do the workout, to not deal with the stress, and I think that we really have to have that self-awareness and we have to have that discipline to do the hard things. And that's trained behavior of saying, you know what, I'm not going to do this easy thing, which is, maybe drinking the pain away and, falling into the bottle. I'm actually going to do something that's maybe a little bit more uncomfortable, a little bit harder. Maybe that's talking to someone or reaching out for other positive coping mechanisms to be able to deal with that hard thing. And I really truly believe that the only way to get through hard things is to go through. Like you can't go around, it's straight through. And so I appreciate that you said that it's the easy way out, but it does make me sad that, that was just what you were taught as a young officer. And obviously now things are evolving and changing. How do you think that experience of seeing others, maybe taking that path of least resistant, how did that impact you and, things that you've learned for your own personal wellness and then how you, incorporate wellness and how you lead today?
Yeah, I think one of the, I guess one of the largest takeaways is that you just follow. When you're new, you just follow. You do it. You see that, if you're lucky enough, you recognize it early on that it's not a good habit to form. Probably one of the worst habits to form in this job is not to communicate with your spouse, your loved ones about what this job is and how that affects you because it affects them. And I think, we have to recognize that early on. That's something that took me a while to recognize, not bringing the job home to your loved one. You think you're doing them a favor. You're actually not. You're closing yourself off from that. So I think that's one of the important lessons that I learned along the way. Um, how you get out of that, to your point, you go through it. You make a conscious effort to do it, and I think we have raised a generation now where they expect that these things are going to be in place. Counselors are going to be in place when you have a bad call. Debriefings are going to be in place. Um, this is the first department I came into where we had a very active police chaplain who wasn't about religion. He was about helping people get through things
Mhm.
and just being there as a sounding board. I think that was a huge step up, and I would say any department that doesn't have one should have one because again, it's not about religion; it's about supporting your officers,
Mhm.
about being there for them and providing a service to them. You got to go through it. You got to make a conscious effort that that is not going to be the way that you're going to handle those calls for service or those incidents that accumulate over time. And I try to demonstrate that. I think, again, one of the things that you have to understand or you have to do as a leader is be yourself. And I think that is myself as somebody that's a work in progress. And I try to show the officers that that is the way that it is. Own things that go wrong and make sure that I'm there when things go right and make sure that I'm there to support them when they've had a bad day or a bad call, even if it's outside of this job. Make sure you're there to support them because they call it a family for a reason. Or a family. And, you never leave this family. Even if after you retire, you're still with us. We had a retirement ceremony, I should say a commemoration ceremony for retirees that have passed on. I didn't know any of those folks, but they're still part of this family and we're still going to honor them.
Yeah. No, I love that. And I really honestly love the approach of relatability too. It's like I I can't relate to someone who says that they did it right every time. We talked about this a little bit before, but if you can come in and say, I'm a work in progress, maybe I didn't do things the best. I tried to keep things for my wife and I realized that that wasn't the best option. And now I try to do better. I think that gives people permission to be human. And I think that's really important because this idea of perfection is such an illusion, but it's something that we strive for every day. And it's so unattainable. And it feels defeating when you do have, something that doesn't go perfect, or when you feel like you've messed up because you're now viewing yourself as this failure. But to say, everyone's a work in progress and we're human, and there are going to be things that we don't do right, but how can we learn from them and how can we put in place resources organizationally that make sure that we can catch people when they fall and that we have the things that they need when they need them, I think is so important. And I really love that idea of like relatability and knowing that it's okay to,
Yeah,
maybe not be perfect because we're never ever going to be perfect. And it is a family and you have to support each other. And I would even go as far as, it's not just organizationally, it's the law enforcement profession as a whole. Like you guys
absolutely.
are all brothers and sisters in it together forever, and
Absolutely.
I think that that's inspiring. And I think that you have to give people permission to be human.
Yeah, and that's something that society has made difficult for us. I think it's starting to come around. Unfortunately, there was some tragedy that had to take place for the general public to understand that we are human beings. We will make mistakes. We're not robots. We don't get it right every time. We do our best. Um, so externally, you have to be authentic as well to the public because we're not this robot that's going to go out there and get it right every time. Going through some extremely tragic times in our country, it's unfortunate that it took that for the general public to realize that, oh, these guys and girls are they're just people too. They have lives, they have people that they have to go home to. And some of the decisions they make are just for that reason, so they can go home.
Yeah.
Um, and that's one of those things that I think it took a while to get to, but I think we're there.
Yeah. And I do want to note that, like, I think that the job that you do is extraordinary. And you guys are so selfless in so many ways. And I think that that should be noted too. I think sometimes it's easy to focus on the negative part of it, but I think that we also need to recognize that this is a really hard career that right now in this moment of time, people aren't running to sign up for it. We have, and we talked about this a little bit, there's a crisis across the country with hiring, new officers. And so I think that we also have to recognize that the work that you guys do is extraordinary. It's extremely challenging, and the job is still a job that is aspirational and inspirational. And but at the same time, you're not perfect and you never
Right.
will be, and that's okay, and as long as you learn from it. So I wanted to kind of circle back a little bit to um, this idea of, and I want your opinion on this really, because I hear different opinions on this. You said that the younger generation coming in, they expect these things, and of course, we're again talking about how hard hiring is. And so, as a part of recruitment, a lot of agencies are leaning on their wellness programming because maybe they don't have the funds or the budget. It's really competitive financially because everyone's kind of duking it out, like competing against each other for the same pool of hires. And then they come in, and a lot of the younger people, from my understanding, maybe aren't financially motivated. They are motivated by, how the agency is going to support them, the community and how supportive the community is of policing. Um, but then at the same time, agencies are finding it really challenging to get young people to take advantage of the resources because they're like, well, we don't need it yet. Like we're young and we feel good. How are you managing all of that? I know that was a lot to put into one question, but how are you managing not only, being competitive, amongst other agencies, and, trying to create maybe some other unique things that are enticing, but then once they're in, how do you get them to use and take advantage of these things?
Yeah, recruiting and retention is tough. I know you've spoke with a lot of chiefs across the country, and they're all saying the same thing.
Mhm.
It's hard to get people to get come in the door now. So the people that you have, you want to retain as long as you possibly can, and not see them go to another agency. You want to keep them until somebody retires,
Yeah.
which is the ultimate goal. Um, so on the recruiting side of things, yeah, we're in a market where we're between two major uh, cities here in Western New York, Buffalo and Rochester, one on the east, one on the west. So our people are constantly being pulled towards those jobs that have larger salaries, can offer a little more benefit. Um, One of the things that I think we do really well is honor people's time. Um, it is important to people to have their time off, not just vacation, not just holidays, but their actual days off.
Mm.
There are a lot of agencies around that cancel your days off when they need you, can call you in on a moment's notice, can change your shift at a moment's notice. We don't have it even written in our contract that we can't cancel days off, but we don't. As a practice, it is our last resort to call you and say, "Hey, Paige, I really need you today to come in and work this shift because somebody else is sick or whatever." So I think it's important that you honor that. I think people trust that if they're if they're on their past days are what they've earned by working their previous shift, right? And then time off is important. So being flexible in how you approach that, we know we have to schedule shifts, we have to do coverage. There's lots of events, especially this time of year when the weather's getting nicer here in Western New York. We have 5Ks and parades and details and all this stuff that has to be covered, and we cover it. But we try to make sure that we allow people the time off to recoup, to go enjoy it with their family, their friends, and just recharge. It is one of the things that I think we do well as an organization. And it's an intangible, I guess. To some people, it means more than it does to others. This generation, we have seen in our hiring practices or our interviews over the past several months and even years that folks really just they want their time off.
Yeah.
You know, I have a son that's in his 30s, and that is what he looks forward to is his time off. He goes to work for different organizations if they give him the right time off, and I don't blame him. That's something that our generation, my generation, was not good at. Um, we came to work all the time, and
Yeah.
we missed a lot of stuff because of it.
Well, first of all, you do not look like you have kids in their 30s.
Well,
So
thank you.
I'm gonna need that like skincare routine or something. But is
Yeah, I have to ask my mom for it.
is your son in law enforcement?
He is not. So I'm the only individual in my family that's in law enforcement.
Okay.
My father worked as a mechanic for many, many years, and he worked at Wyoming County Highway Department where he worked on the deputies' cars. So I got to know some of those folks then, and went on a ride along one time. And just a quick story: went on a ride along with the deputies, and I was hooked. That was it. I wanted to be a cop. I wanted to help people. I wanted that little bit of adrenaline rush, if you will. Um, but yeah, I'm the only one in my family in law enforcement. I'll probably be the last, and
Yeah.
that's okay.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I love that story. And I've heard stories like that before. And of course there's a little bit of adrenaline, like junky stuff to it, like, the excitement. But I think that I've never met anyone in law enforcement that said that they didn't want to help people. I think that's at the core of who you are. But I agree with you in everything that I've heard. The younger generation, they do value their time off, and that is something that's important to them. And they do want time to go on vacation and spend with their friends and their family. And I know that there is difference of opinions on that, but I don't necessarily think that that is a bad thing. I think that it's just different, and it's something that, you have to try to adapt to. And it sounds like you guys saying, hey, like we value your time off too. We want you to spend time with your family. We want you to be able to reset and recharge. My question to you is, what would you say to another chief that's like, we can't make that happen because of staffing or, any other pushback that you might hear about that. Like what would you say to that?
I would say it's obviously it's every individual chief's discretion as to how they treat their scheduling and how they approach time off and overtime. I'll just say that it works for us.
Mm,
It's proven that the folks here we do SWOT analysis all the time. The strength, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats of the department, and that's been the highlight of every single one. One of the biggest strengths is the time off is honored.
yeah,
So I think that's important. I think when you're looking at agency A and agency B, and maybe the benefits are similar, you're going to go to the agency that allows you more freedom and more time off. I believe
yeah,
that's just me. So I would tell them, it's up to you. You do what you got to do, but I can tell you that people enjoy it, people expect it, and I think it's something that you can do that, isn't a heavy lift. At the end of the day. There are things that you're gonna have to staff. You're gonna have to make that call. But I do know that our city council and our administrative body over at City Hall also supports that. And I think that's important is to get the buy-in of the people that are creating and approving your budget so they understand what that rollout looks like or what that looks like to the officer that is working all those hours because they're taking their time off, but they're working just as much overtime.
mm,
um, which that's the other part of it is we know they're working hard, and when they're here, they're working hard.
yeah,
Um, they're doing all the extra details when they're here, so they're working their 8 hours plus working more. So to give them their time off, it's a no-brainer.
yeah. I was going to
In my,
ask you if you have you seen a direct impact on mood, morale, performance from, giving people that time off to reset. Have you seen that direct ROI or even just people saying like, thank you? Like that felt so good to be able to take time off to spend with my family.
well, anecdotally, I can say, I did order one person on their day off. Well, in my tenure here, and I saw the return of that. That was not good. That was not
Mm,
good.
got
It blew up in my face pretty quickly.
it.
Um, but and it's up in the officers' analysis when we do the SWATs and in our negotiations as well. That time off is certainly one of their most valued benefits that they have here. So
Yeah.
anecdotally, I can say that it does help morale. You can definitely see when somebody is working a lot of hours and they come into work, they're not as energized, maybe as happy. The morale's not up, but after they've come back from vacation or they've come back from their days off, when they've spent time, you see that morale pop back up,
Yeah.
and I think it's good for everyone to see that.
Yeah, no, I agree. And I wanted to maybe highlight some of the other things that you guys are doing as well, because I know that you really try to take more of a personalized approach, not a one size fits all, trying to figure out like what is actually going to work for your people, how you can get people to participate. So anything that you can kind of highlight that you guys are doing organizationally or citywide.
Yeah, so I think as far as internally, we are on the cusp of creating our wellness program. Although, if you want to say we've had it in place for a long time, because of some of the things that we have been doing with the time off, with the chaplain program, et cetera. But there's so many options out there right now and different programs that are available when it comes to physical wellness or mental health wellness or religious. Everything under the sun is available,
Mm,
and that's one of the things I think we kind of struggle with is we got to pick something. We got to figure out what we're going to do. But overall, as an agency and as a city, we have a pretty good healthcare program for the officers that focuses on their physical health, and it's every city employee. Um, we have a healthcare plan that's based upon a wellness program. So the higher you score, or I should say, the lower you score in some of those negative healthcare traits, the less you pay in your premiums towards healthcare.
mm,
So I think that definitely helps people with their physical health. The our contract has a physical fitness incentive built into it. So once a year we hold a physical fitness. It's the same as an entry level officer, and depending on your score, you get a check. You get paid for staying healthy. So I think it's a very good approach that was put into place by private previous administrations to help out with that. And then, just coming back to internally, I think being being that there's so many options out there, we're working through those. We've got a couple people that are dedicated to the wellness program itself, but we have great support and great resources available locally, whether it's our local mental health association or Western New York law enforcement helpline, and other organizations in New York. They're everywhere now, which is good, which is great. We're overwhelmed with them. The having too many choices is better than not having any.
It's so interesting that you said that because, you know, when I started 8 years ago, like there really wasn't a ton. And now, like you said, it's like almost overwhelming. And I do think that's a good thing in a sense. It's like the more I think that there's so much space to do good, and I do think that every agency is different, every state is different, the culture within the organization is going to be different, the things that you need are going to be different. And so having choices that can cater to your people specifically, I think is good. But I could see how that you're like decision paralysis. You're like, what do we do? There's so
Yeah.
many to choose from.
Well, and I kind of look at it as a cafe approach, if you will. So not one size fits everybody, right? So some folks are really into the physical side of wellness. That helps with their getting their stress released. Some people want to talk to people. Some people want to be left alone. Some people, want to do things in group. Some people don't want to do things in group. So I think you have to really um, make your program almost universal. And how do we make it universal? Um, you lean into others, right? You look at the organizations that are around you, you look at everything that's available in your area, and you pick and choose what is right for circumstance. If there's a mass casualty event, if there's a substantial critical incident, you reach out to the folks that are good at that. You bring in the wellness teams, and then you offer counseling to those that may need it. Overall, I think having a good atmosphere and having a good positive work environment is important.
Mhm.
I think it's more important than doing the big things, if you will, even though those are very important. The day to day is what, the day to day stress is a killer for officers, and literally a killer for officers sometimes.
Yeah.
So having a positive workplace is important, and just building your program to what the actual event needs, and what fits that, if
I
that makes sense.
It does. And I agree that, culture first. Try to create a good culture within the organization where you're supporting each other, you're talking to each other, and then all the other stuff that you put on top is extra. And um, I do agree with you that situations are going to change the resources, but I also think that um, time, like there might be like a period of time where like something's really successful and then it's not, and you need to switch it up. And so having this like ability to adapt to the time and the situation, and then also recognizing that like maybe you do try some things and they don't work, and that's okay too. It's kind of that, like we talked about earlier, that trial and error, like learn from it, try something new, because there might be things that you guys implement organizationally that you think sound really good, and then in reality, maybe, people don't gravitate towards it. And so it's like, okay, well, what can we try next? So I think it's just like you said, that adaptability to understand the situation, the time, and the needs of your people. So I really do. I like that you said like the cafe approach. I've never heard it like that before. Like I've heard buffet, charcuterie board, all the things, but I like that. Like there's lots of different things that can make sure that each individual is um, taken care of.
Yeah, and let them be part of that decision making as well. I mean, that's we can sit in, the chiefs and the hierarchy of the department can sit in a room and say, this sounds like a really great idea. And you talk to the officer that's been here for 3 days and be like, why would you do that? That
Mhm.
just doesn't make any sense to me. I don't need that. So I think involving them in that process of selecting what they need to help them um, learn and grow and recover from whatever the incident was is important. Now, there's certain things that you're going to mandate, right? So if there's a critical incident, I'm mandating that my folks go to a debriefing. What
Mhm.
they get out of it is what they get out of it. They're not forced to talk. They're not forced to follow up with counselors or anything like that. But if it's critical enough, I'm going to make sure that they at least know that the support is there. Um, but outside of that, the day-to-day stuff and how you deal with the stressors of the job, they got to be involved in that process because it's for them.
Yep. Yeah, and I think that that gets them to buy in to
Mhm.
it. So it makes the things that you do implement more successful because they've already said, hey, this is something that I'm looking for. And then I know that you talked about like this incentivization approach because there's lots of different approaches. And I wanted to maybe dive into that a little bit because you told me that that has been really successful. And
Yeah.
having some sort of incentive has helped for your people to be really healthy. Is that true that you've seen like really good success with having that little, I know you said like the carrot approach.
The carrot and the stick approach,
Yeah.
absolutely, because obviously there's a return for that. Like your paycheck goes up if you meet the wellness markers. So again, it was started before I was here. As a former city manager, put it in place, but he built it into all the contracts. You've seen officers that are more physically fit than they have ever been. I think they take it more seriously because of that, the carrot, if you will. So they get a benefit to that. Um, and on the other side of that is there have been some diagnoses that were caught early on by doing this testing that have really benefited the individual that took the test, and they were able to get some assistance and go to a doctor. So, as you know, not everybody goes to a doctor every year. So this gets them the opportunity to take a look at their blood work at least and see where they're at with different levels of things and try to make improvements. Um, but yeah, I do think it's important. And I do think there's a big benefit in our organization of this, from this, excuse me, because I have seen officers take it seriously too, and it's always done at the beginning of the year, so they always joke that it's right after the holidays, haha, they're going to get us. So they consciously make efforts to eat better during that time, and working up to that, and the physical agility benefit as well. You hear them talking about it in the locker room and out at briefing about how that's coming up, and I got to get myself in shape, and I got to get down to this mile marker or this time for the mile and a half. So you see an improvement in their performance and in longevity of the officer's health as well.
I think that's hilarious that you do it in January and everyone's like, no, we just had all the cake and the candy and all the things. But I think that the first step is always the hardest. Anything that you do, that first initial step of trying something new or getting into a routine or that consistency is really hard. And um, getting people to do something that maybe they wouldn't normally do is hard, right? That buy-in. And so having that incentivization of saying, hey, like, we're going to offer you this. We're going to offer you more money, but also like we're giving you this first step and this opportunity to promote longevity in your life. And I think that incentives to me are really successful. And it's not meant to be a one and done. It's not meant
Mhm.
to be like, okay, here it is. You tried it once. Great. The idea is that once they try it and now they feel better physically, mentally, they're going to want to continue to do that. And that's going to support a healthier lifestyle long term. But it's that initial first step to get them to at least try it, and see how you feel. And I have never had anyone who has started on like a wellness routine say that they didn't feel better.
Right, exactly. At the end of it, it's creating the habit, right? So you have to create the habit. I know that when it was first rolled out, it wasn't very widely accepted here because, people said, "Oh, that's just a way for the city to get more money from my insurance premium." But at the end of the day, it's been in place for well over 15 years that I'm aware of here. So I think you're reaping the rewards of that now, not just. Um, as an organization financially because your premiums are dropping.
Mm,
Um, but as individuals that have been here long enough to see that, and to your point, you have to start somewhere,
yeah.
and you have to create that habit. I do know that I've seen at least officers here that once they get enrolled in the program or they start here, then they start on a physical fitness journey for themselves. Not me, others. But
Well, I think
it
that's a
definitely,
really good point. I mean, obviously, the goal is to promote longevity and the wellness of your people, but it's also a good point to say, well, as an organization, we're also saving money because they're healthier, they're sick less, they're injured less, so I think that that's a really good point too, as far as like ROI is helping the individual, but it's also helping the organization. I wanted to ask you, as a leader, what do you think is maybe one of the biggest lessons that you've learned?
oh, in general, oh, a lot.
We have time.
I've learned how to be humble. I think the biggest thing is I mentioned this early on, not being afraid to fail and understanding that you do make mistakes and you have to show people that you're human. Um, I think of some of the people that I used to work with that could never be wrong, and I didn't respect them as much as I respected others. I think that's one of the biggest takeaways I've had in my career is just trying to be humble and trying to show people humility because you're not perfect. It's a difficult job. It's difficult as the leader in the organization to say that because people don't expect that when you come to a staff meeting or you come to a supervisor's meeting and you say, "Hey guys, I screwed up. We need to figure out how to do this." As a group, I made a decision. It was a wrong decision, and now we have to figure our way out of it. But um, I think that's one of my biggest takes from my career is I don't know everything.
Yeah. No, I love that. And I'm going to call you out a little bit too, because when we talked offline, I took notes of some things that you said, and I think that this is really valuable too. And you talked about spending time with your people, listening to your people, and the importance of being able to adapt. And I was hoping that maybe you can explain the importance of that for you as a leader as well.
Yeah, I appreciate you taking that note because I told you that I would forget it. Yeah, I think listening to them is very important. They want to be heard. When people have bad days, they want to have somebody to talk to, even if it's just to vent. So listen to them when they're talking to you. It's one of the big important things I think you can do for folks. As well as, I don't know if I mentioned this before, but celebrating their achievements, whether they're in-house or outside of this, because that's important, not just once a year, not just in private, do it in public, celebrate their achievements, whether they're big or small. And one of the other things I think, and at least I get a reward out of this is reaching out to people when they're not feeling well or they're injured. I think a lot of times when people get injured on the job, you expect that your boss is going to call and see how you're doing and when you're going to come back to work. But when you're not injured on the job or when you're just sick, when you're prolonged care or something like that, something happened away from work, I don't think they expect that they're going to get a phone call and say, "Hey, how are things going? And is there anything that I can do?" Um, and then, recognizing that our folks deal with adversity differently. So some people will still tuck it away and push it down, and you just have to be there and monitor their actions. Some people are going to reach out for help immediately. Some people are going to reach out to clergy or something like that, and understanding that they deal with it differently, and we have to support it differently. Um, it's it's like raising your own children and making sure that they have all the tools they need to be successful. And I am at an age now where I can say that the folks that are being hired are people that are at the age of my children. So I can say that. But it's truly what it is. It's raising people and showing them the right way of how to do things in the proper way, or at least the way that I think is healthy.
I love that. I really appreciate the reaching out to them when they're sick and celebrating their accomplishments too. I think that when things are really hard, it's nice to know that people are supporting you. And then on the flip, like when you're not validated for the good work that you do, especially in such a challenging career, to have someone who's also recognizing the good stuff. Because I think sometimes there's so much focus on the negative things, the bad things, the mistakes. So to have someone who's not only reaching out to you, like, and caring for you as a human being, but then also saying, "Hey, we recognize the good work that you do too." I think that it's a really good point to make. My final question for you is, what words of wisdom would you share with someone who's earlier in their career in the context of wellness? Maybe
Mhm.
something that you wish you would have known or something that's helped you along the way.
Listening to people, people tell you what they need. So if you listen to your folks, they may not come out and say, "Hey, I'd really like to go see a counselor. I'm really struggling with this." But if you listen to what they say, you're going to hear it. You're going to hear what they need. It may be space. It may be to deal with a counselor. It may be going and having a physical activity. Excuse me. Um, but I would say, being that sounding board for them so they understand that you're listening to what they need. Um, that's something that it takes time to do. You have to make the time to do it. We're all busy. We're all very busy people. Leaders especially are very busy. Take the time out of your schedule to make that happen, um, and be with them when they're going through that. So don't be non-existent. Don't send them over to whatever the course is and not attend it with them. If there's a debriefing, go to it. Even though you weren't at scene, even though you weren't, part of that critical incident or whatever it was, go to that because they appreciate that you're there. Um, and I think that's important for people.
Thank you. I
Thank you.
appreciate your time so much. I really do. And that's all I have for you. But if there's anything I missed, I want to give you the opportunity to take the floor. But I just really, really appreciate your time. So thank you.
No, thank you. The only thing that I think I mentioned earlier is we have ceremony for the officers that have passed that retired from our department, and their families show up to these things. And I think it struck me. We just had this the other day, our ceremony, and it struck me of some of the words that the family members say to you is they're not forgotten,
Mm.
and they appreciate that even after they've passed on. It's because they've given a big chunk of their life to protecting the community and serving the city and serving the whatever municipality or community that they are in. So I think it's important that we honor that in whatever way we can, small, large, whatever it is.
Absolutely. I appreciate you saying that. Thank you for your time. Thank you for being here. I really do appreciate it.
Thank you for having me.
Of course.